What if the encounter between Jesus and the Samaritan woman wasn't just a conversation, but a carefully structured message inserted into the Gospel of John? In this series, we'll examine the story's mirror-like chiastic layers, where the beginning and the end reflect each other, and the center may hold the key. This video starts with the outermost layer, setting the frame for what lies within. A chiasm, also called a chiasmus, is a literary structure where ideas are arranged like a mirror, A, B, then back again as B prime and A prime. The mirrored pattern draws the reader's focus inward, pointing to a central idea that might otherwise be missed. Think of it as a sandwich. The bread on the outside matches, and the most important thing, the filling, is in the center. For example, in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says the last will be the first, and the first will be the last. That's a chiasm. The beginning and the end reflect each other, and the reversal makes the point memorable. In this series, we'll explore how the Samaritan Woman story might follow this same mirror design, leading us straight to its hidden center. In my opinion, the A is verses 1 through 3. Now, Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. In verses 1 through 3, simply put, we have Jesus learns, the Pharisees heard, and Jesus leaves. What is the A prime? For the A prime, we have two possibilities. One possibility is based on thematic similarities. The other possibility is based on what appear to be structural similarities. We'll look at the thematic possibility first. Thematically, verses 40 through 42 work well as an A prime. In verses 40 through 42 we have, "So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed for 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, 'We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world.'" In verses 40 through 42, simply put, we have Jesus stays, the Samaritans heard, and the Samaritan woman learns. There's also a resonance between A having Jesus gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, and A prime having, because of his words, many more became believers. When evaluating A prime structurally, verses 43 through 45 are worth a look as well. After the 2 days, he left for Galilee. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. Because I'm looking at the structure or flow of the verses, I'm not going to match parallel or inversely parallel phrases or words within the verses. However, I'll demonstrate two interesting phenomena when pairing these two sets of verses as possible bookends. Side by side, you can see that the second verse in each pairing interrupts the flow. Here is a table showing the sets of verses without their respective interrupting second verses. John chapter 4, verses 1 and 3 state, "Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, so he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee." John chapter 4, verses 43 and 45 have, "After the 2 days, he left for Galilee. And when he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there." Do you see what I mean? You can clearly see the flow is seamless now. This, of course, causes more questions. Why were the verses inserted? Were they inserted later, or were they a part of the original crafting of the story? Is their inclusion evidence they are signals to a chiastic structure? Additionally, these two middle verses do slightly parallel each other in at least one thematic area. Each negates something. Verse 2 negates the notion that Jesus personally baptized people. In verse 44, we have Jesus possibly referencing a lack of honor or no honor in his home country. Now for the surprise. A moment ago, I mentioned that there were two phenomena which I noticed with these sets of verses. We just covered the first one. Now we'll look at the second one. And this is where it gets really interesting. If we combine the two sets of verses vertically, we can see a linear, chronological, and thematic flow. In other words, when the structure of these verses are aligned, the themes are aligned as well. John chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, when combined with John chapter 4, verses 43 through 45 read, "Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. After the 2 days, he left for Galilee. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. Further tightening up the flow by removing verse 43, which reads, "After the 2 days he left for Galilee," we can see an uninterrupted trip from Judea to Galilee. John chapter 4, verses 1, 2, 3, 44, and 45. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now Jesus himself had pointed out that a prophet has no honor in his own country. When he arrived in Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him. They had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the Passover festival, for they also had been there. When these verses are pieced together in this way, it seems the Samaritan woman story may not have even been a thing in the Gospel of John at one point. So what do you think? Is the real mirror to the beginning found in the Samaritan woman story's bold testimony to the townspeople, or is it in Jesus' quiet return to Galilee, bookending the journey he started when the Pharisees took notice? Is the Samaritan woman story supposed to be in the Gospel of John at all? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And in the next episode, we'll peel back another layer of this story while we continue to ask, what is the Samaritan woman story?